Hi everybody. In this video, I'm going to address all 6 of the arguments I have thrown at me. Arguments I have been responding to since 2015 when I first started testing handgun safes. Normally the gun fanatic who throws an argument at me tries 1 or 2 arguments and then realizes he hasn't thought things through and he gives up. Every so often I have to deal with somebody who's convinced he's a bright guy. He will throw out all 6 arguments and they're always in the same order. So I'm going to address these arguments in the order that I hear them. I need to acknowledge something here, and this is not just for me, it's for other YouTubers out there who have gun-related channels. Everybody has to deal with this. No one excels the American gun owner in being able to appropriate expertise, authority, and knowledge from thin air. He doesn't need to read books. He doesn't need to attend any universities. He doesn't have to have any special career experience. He doesn't have to have any licensing or certifications. He just reaches into the ether and has knowledge in hand. Something else I've noticed over the years, and I've seen this year after year, many gun owners, the majority of gun owners I've met are in fact former Navy SEALs, former Green Berets, former SWAT team members, former cops, former National Guard, you name it. The gun owner in the United States is an exceptionally well-educated, well-rounded individual. They're members of an elite segment of society. That's called a not joke. Yeah, I don't know. I do not understand what happens to people once they become gun owners and enter the gun world. They seem to be almost uniformly beset by a delusional disorder that will cling to them and remain with them throughout life. I've met guys in their late middle age who have spent their lives accumulating guns, and with each gun somehow magically accumulating knowledge so that they are learned in every pursuit, in every endeavor of humanity. They know it all. There's something else that's closely associated with this phenomenon, and I'm going to offend some people here, and I don't really care. It's the notion of so-called stolen valor. You've heard this idea. If you're in the gun world and you have been observant and you're paying attention, you see this all the time. You see a lot of guys get into shooting, they start building AR platform rifles, they start accumulating tactical gear they don't need, start trying to find a way to get access to training they don't really need. They seem to be preparing for combat they will never see. They almost are intent upon fooling people. If they can convince you that by talking the talk and walking the walk, if they can convince you that they're former military or former law enforcement, they consider that a job well done. So I have a hard time understanding the concept of stolen valor. I really don't see what the concern is. If you are in the gun world, if you support the Second Amendment, and again, if you're aware and observant, you see this behavior all the time. It's baked into the culture to behave this way. A lot of people behave this way. It's just the culture of the gun world. So now let me address the 6 arguments I have been responding to for over 9 years now. Argument number 1, these safes are only intended to keep kids away from guns. Keep kids away from guns is a catchphrase that is invoked by everybody on all sides of gun ownership. Whether you support the Second Amendment or advocating for gun control, everybody invokes child safety as their own personal argument. It's dishonest for many reasons, obviously. If everybody can invoke the same talking point, it's not an argument, it's just a talking point. And of course, you cannot reduce gun safety to being simply a matter of child safety. It's an everybody safety issue. But there's something else I need to acknowledge. Attorney activists who are really on about gun control love to lump data. And they will talk about children injured by firearms. There's a difference between a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 15, 16, and 17-year-old. 15 years old is old enough to be involved in a gang, old enough to be committing some pretty serious crimes. If young people in that age group, technically minors, are injured by firearms, those data points get lumped in with data on children injured by firearms. So don't let yourself get sucked into debates about children injured by firearms. These are dishonest debates. There's no point in even getting sucked into it or trying to correct somebody. You can't correct somebody who's an activist. One of the dangers in reducing gun ownership to being just a matter of child safety is that the manufacturers of these handgun safes only have to convince you through their advertising, their marketing, their packaging, that these devices are impenetrable to a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, or 7-year-old. The gun owner, especially the new gun owner who's just purchased a first handgun, isn't inclined to contemplate how would a young adult break into this thing. It doesn't cross their minds. They don't realize that the handgun safes don't really have to work. Argument number 2. These safes are not intended to permanently store guns. I used to believe this. I did. I will admit, I used to believe this. But after 9.5 years of testing these things, I have received thousands of emails from people who've had their homes broken into, their cars broken into, their safes broken into, and I know for a fact that a lot of people are storing guns permanently in small personal safes and handgun safes. If you live in a condo or an apartment or a townhome, you may live someplace where there just isn't room for a full-sized floor-standing safe. You're going to default to a personal safe, a handgun safe, something like that. Also, I guess I should be honest here and address something. There are a lot of gun personality influencers on YouTube who promote the idea of staging guns around the home. This is a bad idea. I don't recommend this at all. It's also outside the scope of this video. I might touch on this in another video someday, but these same influencers are often approached by manufacturers marketing handgun safes. So they will review handgun safes and promote the idea of staging guns, which means there are a lot of handgun safes out there with guns in them. I don't for a moment believe somebody will adopt a schedule where, let's say, in the evening before they go to bed, in order to, let's say, be prepared for the proverbial bump in the night, they take a handful of handguns out of their main safe and then stage these around the home. And then in the morning, they retrieve all of these handguns and put them back in the safe. But then wait, some people would like to have ready access to a gun during the day in their home. So they take the guns back out of their main safe and stage them around the home in these handgun safes and then put them back in later. There's just no way to come up with a schedule for doing that makes sense and that somebody would actually follow on a daily basis. And I don't believe anybody would do that. My default assumption is that if you see a handgun safe, there's a gun in it. Argument number 3. These handgun safes are only intended to keep honest people honest. This remark is usually delivered with a smile and a wink, as if we're both, in on something. We're not in on anything. I don't spend my time contemplating how to take things that don't belong to me. Honest people don't spend their time contemplating how to take things that don't belong to them. When the gun fanatic makes this remark, what he's doing is telegraphing his own assessment of his fellow man. He's letting me know this. In his opinion, people are fundamentally dishonest and untrustworthy. If that's the way you think, then your handgun safe better damn well work, right? Which brings me back to the reason for testing these things. They don't really offer any security. Argument number 4. These safes are only intended to prevent smash and grab theft. Oh, really? Smash and grab theft. That's what these things are supposed to prevent, okay? Why are these little handgun safes so easy to smash? Argument number 5. We're better off teaching young people safe gun handling. This remark does not in any way address design deficiencies or security vulnerabilities in these products, so in one sense I can ignore it. It's irrelevant. But when people make this remark, they are betraying a kind of a lack of awareness, a thoughtlessness that I want to address. We put young people through driver's education, to give them the best chance we can of being safe drivers. We require everything of the new driver that we don't require of the gun owner, right? A written test, hands-on practical test, licensing. We do this to try to give them the best shot at driving without getting into a collision. But the fact is, we cannot impart good judgment. And not surprisingly, young people make up a disproportionate number of fatalities on the road, especially young men. I want to tell you a quick personal story. I used to ride the train from Oregon up to Seattle regularly. I like riding the train. You get to talk with people you otherwise would never meet. You can eavesdrop, people watch. I was listening to a guy and observing a guy. He had to be in his mid to late 20s, and he was dressed pretty shabby, and he had all of his belongings in a backpack. He looked like he was couch surfing. The girl sitting opposite of him had decided to be polite and appear interested in what he was saying because this guy was a talker. He wanted to chitty chat. And his one subject, his only subject, was his buddy. A couple of weeks ago, my buddy got out of jail. He got busted for doing this. A couple of months ago, he got busted for doing this. He was trying to do this and he did that. 6 months ago, he got busted for doing this. He ended up doing like 4 months in jail when he was trying to X, Y, and Z. And my buddy this and my buddy that. My buddy did this. And pretty soon it became clear this guy was not talking about his buddy. He was talking about himself. And this guy had an impulse control problem. He had really poor judgment. He kept trying to do things that he knew perfectly well were unlawful just to see if he could get away with it, and he never did. My guess is he'll spend most of his adult life in and out of jail. He may never develop maturity or good judgment, and there are some people who actually do better in a prison environment because it's highly structured. He might be the right person for that environment. But anyway, to come back to this idea of teaching safe gun handling, we're not better off teaching young people anything without first taking into account a certain readiness factor that a caregiver will recognize in a young person, that young person's ability to make good decisions. Argument number 6. Well, anybody can break into one of these things with a Sawzall and a diamond tip blade, or anybody can break into one of these things with an angle grinder, and anybody can break into one of these things with C4. Okay, these remarks are an attempt to present me with a tautological statement against which there is no arguing, for which there's no response. It would be like me saying to you, well, if it rains outside, the streets are going to be wet again, so what? The gun fanatic making this last-ditch effort is hoping that he can catch me with a remark that I will have no response to it, and he can think to himself, there, got him, I got him. See, I'm just as smart as I knew I was. Actually, there is a response. If you've watched my videos, you know that you don't need power tools to break into handgun safes. All you need is a screwdriver and a pair of pliers, a paper clip, a piece of wire. So there you go. Those are the 6 arguments I have been responding to for over 9 years, and which I have to respond to every single time I post a video. Thanks for listening.